Empire.
Welcome to Inside the Cap. I'm your host, Joel Corey. You can find me on Twitter at Corey Joel. That's CORRYJOEL. And also, I have a regular column called An Agent's Take at CBSSports.com. This week's episode, we are going to look at Earl Thomas's impending grievance against the Baltimore Ravens, and also teams that probably should do a contract extension because they have multiple core players who will have expiring contracts. Let's start with Earl Thomas. On Sunday, Earl Thomas was released by the Baltimore Ravens. The beginning of the end started on Friday when he had a physical altercation on the field over a missed assignment with fellow safety Chuck Clark. He was sent home from practice and told not to show up on Saturday. To kind of plead his case, Thomas posted a video of the play that led to the scuffle on Instagram, explaining his side of the incident. He deleted it. It's since been deleted because he's probably not supposed to put stuff from practice up on for public consumption. He was released on Sunday when the Ravens had a carefully worded statement where the words "personal conduct that adversely affected the Baltimore Ravens" was the reason given for terminating Thomas's contract. Thomas had signed a 4-year, $55 million contract in 2019 free agency that had $32 million of guarantees. $20 million of those guarantees were in a signing bonus, his 2019 base salary, and his $10 million base salary in 2020 were both guaranteed for skill, injury, and salary cap upon signing. In terms of the NFL, that's considered fully guaranteed. What everyone was thinking was that the Ravens had suspended Thomas for conduct detrimental. Formally went to the step to suspend him of that, but they didn't. Typically in NFL contracts, there's a laundry list of reasons why guarantees would void. And the standard reasons are if you withhold your services, refuse to play or practice or report to the team, then if you're suspended under a league policy, whether that's the personal conduct policy, the performance-enhancing drugs policy, or the substance abuse policy, and also for conduct detrimental by the team or the league, the guarantees will void. Some teams have other conditions in there where you might be suspended for a fine under one of the policies. You could also be suspended if you make disparaging remarks, which against your team, which undermine the public's confidence in the team, is kind of what some of the verbiage says in there. And also, if you engage in conduct reasonably judged by the team to adversely reflect on the organization. Now, the Ravens don't have that second part of the language, what I just talked about. They just have the first part, where if he's suspended by a policy or refuses to hold services. So they didn't formally suspend him for conduct detrimental. Now, the reason that they carefully worded or used that phrasing in his release is under paragraph 11 of your NFL contract. They're trying to invalidate his $10 million base salary using this paragraph because that outlines circumstances for termination, and that heading in that particular paragraph is skill, performance, and conduct is what it says in that particular heading. Now, within that particular heading, the exact phrasing that the Ravens used to terminate Thomas is in there. So they're really trying to bypass the skill, injury, and cap guarantees and go through what's kind of considered maybe a loophole to invalidate the $10 million. Now, also, when you release someone, there's a notice of termination box that the team gives a player, a notice of termination sheet that they give the player, and there are 5 different boxes you can check. And the things are, one of the boxes says failure to maintain satisfactory physical condition. 2, there's another box for failure to make a disclosure of a physical or mental condition when you take your physical. The other is basically lack of skill. Another is for personal conduct, and the other is for salary cap purposes. Now, under the personal conduct box, that language mirrors what the Ravens put out in their statement for releasing him. So that's all to kind of set up that we are invalidating the guarantee because your personal conduct, not because they voided the guarantee in the contract, the skill, injury, and cap guarantees. They just went outside of that to find another way to try to get out of the contract. Now, what's going to happen is, because this is highly unusual, you typically don't see a team try to invalidate a guarantee or a payment that they have an obligation to make going this manner using the paragraph 11. So what you're going to have, and Earl Thomas has 50 days under the CBA to file a grievance, which he would do with the help or through the NFLPA, to enforce the $10 million in guarantees. And I expect this to be something the NFLPA really puts all their weight behind for one reason. They don't necessarily have to agree with Earl Thomas or what he's did or allegedly did or didn't do, but they don't want teams to try to get out of obligations for payment under the guise of personal conduct when it's really because of skill or the salary cap. So they want to nip that in the bud and put up a lot of resistance and roadblocks so other owners don't think they can try to do this. Now, there are going to be some cap implications for this because right now, with the Ravens taking this route, the $10 million comes off the books for now. He was counting $15 million against the cap. That $10 million comes off. Now, once the grievance is filed under the CBA, that 40% of the disputed amount will count on the cap. So that means the Ravens can have $4 million come back onto the cap once the grievance is filed. So they're picking up for temporarily $10 million in cap space. They'll net out $6 million while the grievance is pending. There's going to be a cap charge next year, regardless of the outcome of the grievance, because Thomas had the $20 million signing bonus on the 4-year deal. That's prorated, $5 million per year on the cap. So there's 2021 and 2022 signing bonus proration left in the deal. So the Ravens are going to have a $10 million cap charge in 2021 regardless. Now grievances typically don't happen overnight. The NFLPA and the NFL have the right to have 4 expedited grievances each year. I don't know if this is one they would use for the expedited ones where they get fast-tracked and they're done sooner rather than later. This is probably going to have the usual timing where if it gets done this year, it's going to be late in the season. This will probably happen in 2021, the grievance. Who's going to prevail? Depends on what an arbitrator finds persuasive. The Ravens would have a stronger case if there's a documented pattern of unacceptable behavior by Thomas, where he was either previously fined or given warnings for his conduct. That having that paper trail will be useful for them. And Thomas having the had a heated argument last season with nose tackle Brandon Williams, because Williams didn't suit up for a game and Thomas took issue with that. That was against the Browns early last season, and that almost became physical. There are reports that Thomas was fined last year on several occasions for being late or missing meetings, and that he was starting to start having that occur this year as well. So, one thing that the Ravens are going to use against Thomas is posting that video. So they're going to use that against him as well. Sometimes you have settlements reached instead of letting a grievance go to a hearing with an arbitrator. And that's what happened with the Ravens with Ray Rice. And the reason you reach a settlement is both sides are afraid of getting an unfavorable decision. And this dates back to when Ray Rice was released in 2014 because of the domestic violence against his wife, which was discovered when he was the video from him being in Atlantic City at a casino where he punched his wife. In that case, he was released in 2014, filed the grievance, and in 2015, the two sides reached a settlement for a little under $1.6 million when he had the disputed amount was a little over 3.5. So we'll see how this thing goes. But the Ravens would have had another avenue to try to get out of the $10 million payment with that extra language that some teams have, some don't. With the guarantee voiding for the ability to void guarantees, Ravens don't have it, so they have to go this route, which is an unusual route. Paragraph 11. You don't see too many teams trying to validate payments based on the personal conduct provision in paragraph 11 of the NFL standard player contract. But this will go off the radar screen. Nobody's going to be thinking about the grievance. The more immediate concern is, where's Earl Thomas going to sign and where's he going to play? How much is he going to sign a contract for? What that's going to do is, since the guarantee has offsets, anything he signs for another team, the Ravens will get to credit that against the $10 million should they lose. That's what the offset will do. It reduces the amount of money they're going to owe. Now, if Thomas prevails in the grievance, it'll be that $6 million will be a cap charge for the Ravens minus whatever he signs for. That'll mitigate it a little bit. And if the Ravens get a favorable decision, then that's going to result in a $4 million cap credit because the $4 million that's been counting on the books while the grievance is pending would be the reason for it. So the more important thing now for Earl Thomas is to find a place to play football, and the grievance will be a blip on the radar screen and probably won't hit anybody's consciousness again until later in the year or early next year. It's time to look at some teams that might be best served by doing a contract extension of at least one player, because they've got multiple players in contract years, and you can only designate one player as a franchise or transition player. We've seen that teams are starting to do extensions now that there's clarity on the 2021 salary cap. That worst case scenario is a cap floor of $175 million right after the NFL and NFLPA agreed to what the situation is going to be next year. That's when the Chargers made Joey Bosa the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. Bosa signed a deal with a 5-year, $135 million extension, averaging $27 million per year, highest paid non-quarterback, replacing Myles Garrett, who was at $25 million per year. $102 million overall guarantee, $7 to $8 million fully guaranteed at signing. Chargers still have a little bit of work to do. They've kind of rectified the Melvin Ingram situation. He clearly may have been happy for Bosa, but wasn't happy that his situation had been addressed. He's in a contract year. He's making $14 million this year. He was holding in, not practicing. They guaranteed us $14 million. Hunter Henry, they can't do anything about. He's playing under a franchise tag this year of $10.607 million. Since it's past July 15th, as a franchise player, he can't do a long-term deal until the end of the regular season on January 3rd. Henry's patience is going to pay off. The tight end market has moved dramatically since he was franchised. First, you had Austin Hooper just at the beginning of free agency in March sign the first tight end deal, multi-year contract, over $10 million per year at $10.5 million. But the real jump came a couple of weeks ago when George Kittle signed for $15 million a year, and Travis Kelce at $14,312,500 per year on a deal which just had, quite frankly, a lousy structure for Kelce. But that being said, that type of jump, Hunter Henry should get significantly more than Austin Hooper, provided he stays healthy, which has been his big issue throughout his career. The guy that the Chargers really should have their sights set on is Keenan Allen, who is also in a contract year to get done. Yeah, obviously they could franchise him, but set a career high last year, 104 receptions in 2019. He didn't like his ranking in the NFL Network's top 100 players. He was 77th. But if he signs an extension, it's going to put him in the upper tier, salary-wise, of receivers. Just looking at it from a worst-case scenario, if you look at the contracts of the top 10 wide receivers, 10 highest paid, they average nearly $18 million per year, with $32.5 million fully guaranteed at signing, $49.25 million of overall guarantees right around there. Average contract length 4 years, so that's got to be a floor for him. The Buccaneers are in win now mode after signing 43-year-old Tom Brady to a 2-year, $50 million fully guaranteed contract. It's got incentives which could take it up to $59 million. They can't do anything with Shaq Barrett, their edge rusher, who led the NFL with 19.5 sacks last year. But they got a couple other players. They need to get at least one of these two guys done, I think. Chris Godwin, wide receiver, breakout year in 2019. Missed the final 2 games of the regular season. Still had 86 catches, over 1,300 receiving yards, 9 touchdowns. Named his first Pro Bowl. And also the underrated Levante David. This guy's like the Rodney Dangerfield of off-ball linebackers. Most underappreciated guy. Never goes to the Pro Bowl. 3-down linebacker for them. In the final year of a 5-year extension, averaging shade over $10 million per year. He signed in 2015. The going rate for off-ball linebackers is $13 to $15 million per year. You got Bobby Wagner, who's eventually going to be in Canton, who signed last year, averaging $18 million per year. David's 30, so he's not going to get Bobby Wagner money. Quan Alexander, former teammate of his, who tore his ACL in the contract year, went to the Niners in 2019 free agency for $13.5 million per year. So David, someone that they should want to keep, but Godwin, he's going to be up there, one of the highest paid wide receivers. He's going to be making more than Mike Evans. Mike Evans signed a 5-year extension in 2018, averaging $16.5 million per year with $55 million in guarantees. That is now a 2-year-old deal. So Godwin will be the highest paid wide receiver on the Buccaneers if a deal's done. The Saints are also a very interesting ball club just because they've got multiple players in contract years, but they've got one of the most challenging salary cap situations. The Saints have been notorious for kicking the can down the road by doing these contract restructures, pushing today's cap obligations into tomorrow. That's all well and good when the cap keeps going up, but the cap being at $175 million floor is probably going to be higher than that when it's ultimately figured out. But dropping it all, even if it remained flat at 198.2, they're in trouble because they've got $260 million of cap commitments for next year. And right now they have a little under $7.7 million of cap room. You can carry that over, and that's going to decrease once you have all players counting against the cap instead of the top 51 on September 10th. So you got $260 million in cap commitments. Even if the cap gets to 198, good luck with that. But they've already started negotiations with Alvin Kamara, running back, who was the 2017 NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year. He's never been their workhorse back. He was in a timeshare of Mark Ingram. Even when Ingram was suspended for 4 games in his final year with the Saints, they still kept Kamara on a pitch count. Last year they brought in Latavius Murray in free agency to help him shoulder the load. And Kamara last year was slowed by ankle and knee problems. Had an MCL sprain among other things. Missed 2 games. Team didn't miss a beat without him. He wasn't his usual self last year, so that's not actually the best time to be trying to sign a contract. But Kamara is one of your best dual threat running backs in the league, so he's probably going to get one of those upper echelon contracts. Won't be at Christian McCaffrey's level, $16 million per year, but should be more than the $12.5 million per year that Derrick Henry signed. So if they can get him out of the way, then maybe. Or if they don't, you can franchise him because the running back tag number is going to drop significantly to, I think, around 8.3 if you have a $175 million salary cap. It's $10.278 million right now. Demario Davis, who's played his best football since he joined the Saints in 2018. He's a little bit older guy as well. He's last year was named first team All-Pro. By the Associated Press. He's on a 3-year deal, averaging $8 million per year. He's 31 right now, so that's gonna limit him. And Marcus Williams, free safety, great ball hawk, occasionally gives up a big play or two. But last year, he was tied for fifth among NFL safeties with 4 interceptions. Great range. We saw Budda Baker become the highest paid safety earlier this week at $14.75 million per year from the Cardinals. So minimum $14 million per year, because that's a bunch of safeties. If he has a career year, maybe he's top paid safety in the league, the first $15 million per year guy to get there. Cardinals got one guy out of the way. Patrick Peterson is in a contract year, and Kenyon Drake, the running back that they traded for and allowed them to ship David Johnson off to Houston to bring in DeAndre Hopkins, transition player. The same limitation for not being able to sign a franchise player long term doesn't exist for a transition player. There isn't that prohibition until the end of the regular season, so theoretically they could sign him to an extension before the end of the regular season. Peterson, older cornerback, was the highest paid guy, coming off of a year where he served a 6-game suspension under a drug policy. So maybe they take a wait-and-see approach with both those guys, because Drake in Miami wasn't nearly as productive as he was in Arizona. But ultimately they want to get one of those guys done. Cincinnati, they've got Joe Mixon and A.J. Green, who's playing on a contract year and is playing on a franchise tag in contract years. Mixon is really the priority. If A.J. Green, you let him play it out. You can't do anything, but hopefully he stays healthy, and then you decide what to do with him. Mixon, it's kind of like Dalvin Cook in Minnesota, looking for a new deal, and I'd say Derrick Henry is his floor. That $12.5 million per year is probably the most he could ever get on a deal. 2 straight years, he's rushed for over 1,100 yards. You also have the Packers. They've gotten Kenny Clark done. He recently signed a 4-year, $70 million extension, $17.5 million per year. That should open things up for David Bakhtiari, their offensive tackle, who's arguably the best pass blocking left tackle for a franchise tag. He's going to reap the benefit of Laramie Tunsil's deal. Tunsil worked with an advisor, didn't have an agent, dramatically reset the tackle market at $22 million per year in April. Previously, that mark was right tackle Lane Johnson, who signed a 4-year extension with the Eagles during the middle of last season at $18 million per year. So maybe Bakhtiari comes in between those two numbers, between $18 million and $22 per year. But they also have a couple of other guys who have expiring contracts. Cornerback Kevin King, who's got great size, long guy, 6'3", 200 pounds. He could do very well in free agency. He has a little more consistency, puts that all together. A tall corner with good size, you can play press coverage. Thinking of Byron Jones. He was at 16, kind of reset the market at $16.5 million per year in free agency. And Aaron Jones, the running back, they've already got designs on his replacement. There's going to be a flood of running backs next year, but there's no really immediacy to do anything with Jones. The Rams have 2 guys who were in contract years, Jalen Ramsey and Cooper Kupp, the receiver. Ramsey, that should be their priority. He's in a contract year. He's playing on his 5th-year option this year, which is a little over $13 million, I believe. They gave him a ton of leverage because they did not get a deal done last year when they acquired him in the middle of the season. They gave up 2 first-round picks and a 4th-round pick. Then they go out and release Todd Gurley without him playing new year on the 4-year extension they did a couple of years ago, and they traded Brandon Cooks to the Texans. So you've given him more leverage through those other moves as well. He already had a ton of it to begin with. Ramsey's also somebody who isn't stressed for a new deal. He's not putting pressure on his agent. He's told his agent, you handle it how you see fit, and when it gets done, it gets close, you let me know. That gives the agent, that's an agent's dream, to be in a situation like that. I'd be pushing to become the first $20 million per year cornerback. Now, with Cooper Kupp, they've got another interesting dynamic at wide receiver that Robert Woods is highly productive, but signed a 5-year deal, I think in 2018, averaging 6.8 million per year. It's either 17 or 18, I forget the exact year. But they adjusted it where they gave him a modest bump, but still doesn't reflect how productive he is on the field. So he's got years to go on his contract. But Kupp tore his ACL in 2018. Last year he bounced back from it, led the Rams in receptions, receiving yards, and touchdowns, set career highs with 94 receptions, 1,161 receiving yards, and 10 touchdown catches. He says he wants to stay in LA. That extension they gave Brandon Cooks in 2018 is probably going to be an important data point for Kupp. 5-year extension, $81 million, worth up to $84.5 million through escalators. So that average is $16.2 million per year, had nearly $50.5 million in overall guarantees. The Ravens they can't do anything with Matthew Judon, another franchise player, the edge rusher. So that means their attention should squarely turn to left tackle Ronnie Stanley. The Ravens could not have been happy with what the Texans did with Laramie Tunsil, because that only raises the bar for him from the standpoint that they were both drafted the same year in 2016, 7 picks apart. Stanley went before him as the number 6 pick. Both went to the Pro Bowl for the first time last year. Stanley also earned first-team All-Pro honors. If he's looking to try to model Tunsil's deal, get a very short-term extension, 3 years, the Ravens typically don't do extensions of just 3 years. That's short with their high-end players. They did one with Marcus Peters right before the end of the regular season. I still can't figure out why he signed that deal when the regular season was coming to an end and free agency was coming in March. I think he left money on the table by doing that. Gave them a discount, but he got the shorter term deal, but he had to sacrifice his average yearly salary. It would not surprise me if Stanley became the highest paid offensive lineman, but it's probably going to be on an extension longer than 3 years if he does it. And the Steelers also have a unique dilemma. They don't do contract extensions in the regular season. Their GM, Kevin Colbert, was lamenting about how the next year is problematic for doing extensions. Well, it's not problematic for some other teams. They're not in the same cap situation as the Saints, who are negotiating with Kamara, but they've got Cameron Hayward, Alejandro Villanueva, their left tackle, who's up. Bud Dupree, franchise player, can't do anything with him, playing on the 1-year tender. Juju Smith-Schuster in a contract year, and James Conner. The one that makes the most sense to try to get done is Hayward. And Hayward's a guy that can play the run really well and also get to the quarterback. That's a rare commodity from an interior defensive lineman, a guy who can do both of those things well. Past 3 years, Hayward has 29 sacks. Had 9 last year, so he's averaging 9 sacks a year. So you pay guys who can rush the passer. Clark came in at $17.5 million, younger guy, but wasn't first-team All-Pro last year, wasn't a Pro Bowler, at least on the initial ballot. So $17.5 million is his floor. If I'm Hayward's agent, I'm looking more like the Chris Jones neighborhood. I want to be in the $20 million per year pass rusher club. And one thing that the Clark deal does, it provides a template in terms of structure, because Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, and Green Bay are teams where the only guaranteed money is a signing bonus. They have these March roster bonuses in the second and third year, which aren't technically guaranteed, but are supposed to serve as a substitute for guarantees, but they can still exit the deal, and you don't get any money if they cut you before the roster bonus is due. Clark had has a $25 million signing bonus in his deal, so he's going to have a big signing bonus to go along with it for his deal. So you can see that kind of being the template. And Hayward is scheduled to make $9.5 million. So you've got room to work with him to lower his cap number. Just to keep the cap number the same, you could have a signing bonus up to $42.25 million if you extend the contract at least 4 years by lowering his base salary to his league minimum $1.05 million. So you probably would pick up cap room this year in order to, if you did a deal with Hayward. Smith-Schuster's the most interesting other guy for the Steelers. He was injured last year, and we didn't get a chance to see whether he could be a number one receiver without the presence of Antonio Brown, because when he had his breakout year in 2018, it was with Antonio Brown on the other side. He caught 111 passes for over 1,400 yards in 2018, but without Brown attracting attention, and he was injured last year, played 12 games, was slowed by injuries, 42 receptions, 552 yards. Is he a number one receiver, or is he a 2? So there's not enough information for you to do, at least there's not enough information for me if I'm his agent to do a deal right now, because you can't get anything more than number 2 receiver money, which would put you in the $11 million per year range. Now, if you can prove that you are a number 1 receiver, then that jumps you dramatically, and you're looking at probably a minimum of 15-16 million per year. Big difference between the two. So patience is his friend. Steelers, clock is ticking. First regular season games, 2 weeks from Sunday. So we are in crunch time. So if they want to get something done with Cameron Hayward, they better do it quickly. We know Bud Dupree probably isn't going to get franchised next year, because next year they got to pay T.J. Watt, who is going to be in that $20 million per year pass rushing club, and Dupree will probably be in free agency. But anyway, that's a look at probably should look to extend somebody because of the way their contracts are and who is going to expire. Thank you guys for listening. That wraps up this week's episode of Inside the Cap. You can find me on Twitter at Corey Joel. That is CorryJoel, and also my regular Agents Take column at CBSSports.com. We'll see you back here next week. Goodbye.